Herodotus' Histories vividly describes how the Greeks, few in number, poor and disunited, managed to repulse a massive invasion by the powerful Persian army in the 5th century BC. This amazing upset victory changed the course of Western civilization, as the cities that led the resistance, Athens and Sparta, became the two major powers on the Greek mainland. The remarkable period that follows introduced the revolutionary ideas about democracy, education, philosophy, drama, and, thanks to Herodotus, the writing of history. A wonderful storyteller, Herodotus fills the history with amusing anecdotes and dialogue, human detail about the lives of political figures, and a kaleidoscope of viewpoints from people of many lands. Magnificent in compass and enormously entertaining, the Histories is not only the leading source of original information for Greek history during the all-important period between 550 and 479 BCE, but also an artistic masterpiece that created a new genre of literature. And it also says a little blurb about the translator Donald Latainer. Donald Latainer is the John R. Wright Professor of Humanities Classics at Ohio Wesleyan University. I think that's... Oh, those are just the notes and the intro by him, which was actually a very good intro. Very informative. I used to not read the intros to books like this when I was younger, but I've learned of their importance, and now I always read them. It gives you so much more context for reading dense books or historical books. The translation is by G.C. Macaulay and revised throughout by Donald Latainer. This is the Barnes & Noble's Classics edition. Okay, so the way this is divided is that I'll show you. The first book, Book 1, prologues Croesus of Lydia and Cyrus of Persia. I've already read that, and I am currently on Book 2, Egypt Geography, Customs, History, Tales. So I will be reading excerpts from where I've left off. I'm currently on paragraph 43 of Book 2 about Egypt. Okay. About Heracles, I heard the account given that he was of the number of the 12 gods. But of the other Heracles whom the Hellenes know, I was not able to hear in any part of Egypt. And moreover, to prove that the Egyptians did not take the name of Heracles from the Hellenes, but rather the Hellenes from the Egyptians. That is to say, those of the Hellenes who gave the name Heracles to the son of Amphitryon, or that I say, besides many other items of evidence, there is chiefly this, namely that the parents of Heracles, Amphitryon and Alcmene, or Alcmene, were both of Egypt by descent, and also that the Egyptians say that they do not know the names either of Poseidon or of the Dioscuri, nor have these been accepted by them as gods among the other gods. If they have received from the Hellenes the name of any divinity, they would naturally have preserved the memory of these most of all, assuming that in those times, as now, some of the Hellenes made voyages and were seafaring folk, as I suppose, and as my judgment compels me to think. so that the Egyptians would have learned the names of the gods. Even more than that of Heracles. In fact, however, Heracles is a very ancient Egyptian god, and, as they say themselves, it is 17,000 years to the beginning of the reign of Amasis, from the time when the 12 gods, of whom they count that Heracles won, were begotten of the 8 gods. I, moreover, desiring to know something certain of these matters so far as might be made a voyage also to Tyre of Phoenicia, hearing that in that place there was a holy temple of Heracles. Footnote, that is the Semitic Malkart, the sun god like Baal. And I saw that it was richly furnished with many votive offerings besides, and especially there were such sizes as to shine by night. Having spoken with the priests of the gods, I asked them how long time it was since their temple had been set up. I found these also to be at variance with the Hellenes, for they said that at the same time when the Tyre was founded, the temple of the gods also had been set up, and that it was a period of 2,300 years since their people began to dwell at Tyre. I also saw at Tyre another temple there, another temple of Heracles with the surname Dacian, and I came to Thasos also, and there I found a temple of Heracles set up by the Phoenicians, who had sailed out to seek for Europa and had colonized Thasos. And these things happened full 5 generations of men before Heracles, the son of Amphitryon, was born in Hellas. So then my inquiries show clearly that Heracles is an ancient god, and those of the Hellenes seem to me to act more rightly, who have 2 temples of Heracles set up, and who sacrifice to the one as a mortal god, and with the title Olympian, and make offerings of the dead to the other as a hero. Besides many other stories which the Hellenes tell without due consideration. This tale is especially foolish, which they tell about Heracles. When he came to Egypt, the Egyptians put on him wreaths and led him forth in a procession to sacrifice him to Zeus, and he for some time kept quiet. But when they were beginning the sacrifice of him at the altar, he trusted to his might and slew them all. I think that the Hellenes, when they tell this tale, are altogether without knowledge of the nature and customs of the Egyptians. For how should they, for whom it is not lawful to sacrifice even beasts, except swine and the male oxen and calves, such of them as are clean, and geese, how should these sacrifice human beings? Besides this, how is it in nature possible that Heracles, being one person only, and moreover a man, as they assert, should slay many myriads? Having said this much, we may meet kindness from both the gods and the heroes for our speech. Now the reason why those Egyptians whom I have mentioned do not sacrifice goats, female or male, is this. The Mendesians count Pan to be one of the 8 gods. Now these 8 gods, they say came into being before the 12 gods. And the painters and image makers represent in painting and in sculpture the figure of Pan, just as the Hellenes. this form I prefer not to say. The Mendicians then reverence all goats and males more than the females, and the goat herds too have greater honor than other herdsmen. But of the goats one especially is reverenced, and when he dies there is a great mourning in all the Mendician district. Both the goats and Pan are called in the Egyptian tongue Mendes. Moreover, in my lifetime there happened in the district this marvel. That is to say, a he-goat had intercourse with a woman publicly, and this was so done that all men saw it. The pig is accounted by the Egyptians as an abominable animal, and first, if any of them in passing by touch a pig, he goes into the river and dips himself immediately in the water together with his garments. And then, two swineherds, though they be native Egyptians, unlike all others, do not enter any of the temples. So, in Egypt, nor is anyone willing to give his daughter into marriage to one another and take from one another. Nor is anyone willing to give his daughter into marriage to one of them or take a wife from among them. But the swineherds both give in marriage to one another and take from one another. Now, the other gods of the Egyptians do not think it right to sacrifice swine but to the moon and to Dionysus alone. At the same time and on the same full moon they sacrifice swine. And then eat their flesh. When they abominate swine at all their other feasts, the reason why they sacrifice them at this is a story told by the Egyptians, and the story I know, but it is not a seemly one for me to tell. Now the sacrifice of the swine to the moon is performed as follows. When the priest has slain the victim, he puts together the end of the tail and the spleen and the caul, and covers them up with the whole of the fat and the rest of the flesh. They eat on that day of a full moon upon which they have held the sacrifice, but on any day after this they will not taste of it. The poor, however, among them, by reason of the scantiness of their means, shape pigs of dough, and having baked them, they offer these as sacrifices. Therefore Dionysus, on the eve of the festival, each one kills a pig by cutting its throat before his own doors, and after that he gives the pig to the swineherd, who sold it to him, to carry away again. And the rest of the feast of Dionysus is celebrated by the Egyptians in the same way as by the Hellenes, in almost all things except choral dances. But instead of the phallos, they have invented another contrivance, namely figures of about a cubit in height, worked by strings, which women carry about the villages, with the penis made to move up and down and not much less in size than the rest of the body. A flute goes before, and they follow singing the praises of Dionysus. As to the reason why the figure has the member larger than is natural and moves it, though move no other part of the body about this, there's a sacred story told. Now I think that Melampus, the son of Amethion, was not ignorant of these rites of sacrifice, but was acquainted with them. Melampus first set forth to the Hellenes the name of Dionysus, and the manner of sacrifice and the procession of the phallos. Strictly speaking, indeed, he, when he made it known, did not reveal the whole, but those wise men who came after him made it known more at large. changes in some few points of them. I shall not say that which is done in worship of the god in Egypt came accidentally to the same with that which is done among the Hellenes, for then these rites would have been in character with the Hellenic worship, and not lately brought in. Nor certainly shall I say that the Egyptians took from the Hellenes either this or any other customary observance. I think it is more probable that Melampus learned the manner concerning Dionysus from Cadmus the Tyrian, and from those who came with him from Phoenicia to the land which we now call Boeotia. Moreover, the naming of almost all the gods has come to Hellas from Egypt, for that it has come from the barbarians. I find by inquiry is true, and I believe all the gods has come to Hellas from Egypt, for that it has come from the barbarians I find by inquiry is true. I believe that most probably it has come from Egypt, because except in the case of Poseidon and the Dioscuri, as I have said before, and also of Hera and Hestia, and Themis, and the Charites and Nereids, the Egyptians have practically always had the names of all the other gods in their country. What I say here is that which the Egyptians say themselves. The gods whose names they profess they do not know. These, I think, received their naming from the Pelasgians, except Poseidon. But about this god, the Hellenes learned from the Libyans, for no people except the Libyans have had the name of Poseidon from the first, and have paid honor to this god always, nor have the Egyptians any custom of worshipping heroes. These observances then, and the others besides, these which I shall mention, the Hellenes have adopted from the Egyptians. But to make as they do the images of Hermes with the phallos, they have learned not from the Egyptians, but from the Pelasgians, the custom having been taken over by the Athenians first of all the Hellenes, and from these by the rest, for just at the time when the Athenians were beginning to rank among the Hellenes, the Pelasgians became dwellers with them in their land, and from this very cause it was that they began to be counted as Hellenes. Whoever has been initiated in the mysteries of the Capeiroi, which the Samothracians perform, having received them from the Pelasgians, that man knows the meaning of my speech. For these very Pelasgians who became dwellers with the Athenians used to dwell before that time in Samothracia, and from them the Samothracians received their mysteries. So then the Athenians were the first of the Hellenes who made the images of Hermes with the phallos, having learned from the Pelasgians, and the Pelasgians told a sacred story about it, which is set forth in the Mysteries of Samothrace. Now the Pelasgians formerly used to make all their sacrifices, calling upon the gods in prayer, as I know from that which I heard at Dodona, but they give no title or name to any of them, for they had not yet heard any, but they called them gods. From some such notion as this, they had set in order all things, and so had the distribution of everything. After much time had elapsed, they learned from the Egyptians the names of the gods, all except Dionysus, for his name they learned long afterwards. And after a time the Pelasgians consulted the oracle of Dodona about the names, for this prophetic seat accounted to the most ancient of the oracles among the Hellenes. And at that time it was the only one. So when the Pelasgians asked the oracle at Dodona whether they should adopt the names which had come from the barbarians, the oracle in reply told them to use the names. From this time they sacrificed using the names of the gods, and from the Pelasgians the Hellenes afterwards received them. Whence the several gods had their birth, or whether they were all from the beginning, and of what form they are, the Hellenes did not learn till yesterday, as it were, or the day before, since Hesiod and Homer, I suppose, were 400 years before my time and not more. And they made a theogony for the Hellenes, and gave the titles to the gods, and distributed to them honors and arts, and set forth their forms. Any poets who are said to have been before these men were really, in my opinion, after them. The first views belong to the priestess of Dodona, and the latter ideas regarding Hesiod and Homer are mine. Footnote: Herodotus' chronology boldly dates much later than his contemporaries would the chief epic poets, and boldly credits them with essential concepts of Greek theology. The dates for the poets are far too early still, based on evidence and arguments now available. The Egyptians tell the following tale about the oracles, both that among the Hellenes and that in Libya. The priests of Theban Zeus told me that 2 women in the service of the temple had been carried away from Thebes by Phoenicians, and that they had heard that one of them had been sold to go into Libya, and the other to the Hellenes. And these women, they said, first founded the prophetic seats among the nations which have been named. When I inquired whence they knew so perfectly of this tale, they said in reply that a great search had been made by the priests after these women, and that they had been able to find them, but they had heard afterwards that they had not been able to find them, but they had heard afterwards the tale about them. This I heard from the priests at Thebes, and what follows is said by the prophetess of Dodona. They say that 2 black doves flew from Thebes in Egypt, and one came to Libya and the other to their land. And this latter settled upon an oak tree, and spoke with human voice, saying that it was necessary that a prophetic seat of Zeus should be established in that place. And they suppose that that was divine revelation for them, and made one accordingly. The dove which went away to the Libyans, they say, commanded the Libyans make an oracle of Ammon, and this also belongs to Zeus. The priestess of Dodona told me these things, of whom the eldest was named Promenea, and the next after her Timarete, and the youngest Nicandra. And the other people of Dodona who were engaged about the temple gave accounts agreeing with theirs. Okay, I think that is enough for this historical context in which it was written.